Hey, welcome to the Big Me Kickoff. I am your host, Kevin Noon. It is Friday, February 11th, sometime in the afternoon when I'm recording this, and I'm not sure what time you're going to see this at, but happy weekend. Happy Super Bowl coming up, especially for you Cincinnati Bengals fans, maybe even you LA Rams fans. Maybe. I don't really have a dog in the fight. I live in Ohio. I'm originally from Southern California. The Rams were supposed to be my team growing up. Didn't really care. I'm just hoping for a good game. Would like to see the Bengals win for those long-suffering Bengals fans. Not going to really get too much into that game. I haven't studied it, and there you have it. Mat drills are going on at Ohio State right now. We are getting closer to spring practice. A little roster news: Cormonte Hamilton, one-time tight end, moved to defensive line, no longer with the team. He has moved on. I am not sure where his next destination is going to be, but wish him the best of luck. Great recruiting story for those of you who don't remember. He took a bus by himself from Memphis to Columbus with the purpose of earning an Ohio State offer. And, it's not like he was a two-star completely unheard of, but maybe not a kid really on a lot of people's radar. Earns the offer, gets to Ohio State. You had to feel really good for him. It's kind of a shame to see his time come to an end, but path to the field was not going to be easy for him. Ohio State was sitting at 92 scholarships, need to get to 85, and now they're sitting at 91. Probably going to need to be some more difficult decisions that are going to have to be made coming up here soon. Wouldn't expect all of them to happen here in the near term. Let's get through spring practice. We're not going to have to see the summer enrollees until the summer. A little bit of a question as to what happens. Does the 85 start at the beginning of summer? Does 85 start at the beginning of fall? When does it happen? I'm not really sure on that one. I've seen conflicting reports. What we do know, Ohio State has to get to 85. So there you go. So that's kind of the team news. Ohio State updated its roster. No, the early enrollees do not have jersey numbers reported yet at this point. We don't have an NC2A game to play. So, it's not a matter of people being able to worry about having to put it into their game unless they are carrying on a 2014 game for a long time, doing a better job with that than I ever could imagine. But, that'll come probably leading into the spring game. They're going to have to wear numbers at some point, but just because you wear a number in the spring game doesn't mean that's going to be your number. So we'll see. We'll see. What I want to talk about, though, and what this whole show is going to be about, it's going to be a quick one. I say that a lot of weeks. Oh, this is going to be a quick show. 27 minutes later, this is going to be a quick show. And I mean it. 15 minutes, maybe. We'll see. Depends on how much I start talking here. But one topic: who goes on the road and follows the Ohio State football team? Who has gone out and seen the Big Ten cities? And, for myself, doing this for a living, I've seen all of them at least twice. And then when you throw basketball in and all the years I've been doing this, I've been to some Big Ten cities a dozen times. I mean, more. So, let's look at the 2022 schedule of who Ohio State has and kind of talk about each of those trips. And then we'll look at 23, even though we don't know. We only know the non-conference for 23. Conference has not dropped what the conference schedule is. We've had the talk about they're going to go away from divisions. They're going to go maybe away from 9 conference games. We'll see. We'll see on all that. But we'll talk about a couple of these cities. And if I don't talk about your favorite road city, I'm sorry. I mean, I could talk about Nebraska, but there's not a road game at Nebraska the next 2 years to my knowledge. I mean, we certainly not in 22, maybe in 23. We're just going to assume that the divisions stay in place, and we'll talk about the teams, the 3 teams that Ohio State doesn't play in 22, you would assume, or doesn't play on the road in 22, you assume would be in the road on 23. Michigan State. Now, East Lansing, a little further north, a little further west than Ann Arbor. I don't normally spend a lot of time personally in East Lansing. I found a place in Jackson, Mississippi, Jackson, Michigan, a brewery that has fantastic food, fantastic beer, The problem with this little town, Jackson, and I don't want to say little, I'm making it sound like it's 10 people. No, it's not, but it may as well be because there's no Uber there. So requires everybody to be really good, but you're staying about a half hour outside of Michigan State. I think it's a nice little trip, but the stadium, I mean, East Lansing, beautiful campus. Red Cedar the Red Cedar River runs right through campus. It's a nicer river than the Olentangy. I know they've done a lot of work over by the hospital med campus on ripping some stuff out and kind of trying to fix some things in terms of the river, things that I don't necessarily understand. But the Red Cedar, maybe a little bit more of a creek where it goes through. They've always parked us. Well, most years they've parked us just on the other side of this river, so you get to cross the river. Just a nice campus. I mean, is it Pepperdine? Is it Malibu? No. I mean, let's be honest, but it's still a nice trip. I mean, the fans can be salty. I mean, they certainly feel that they have a bit of a rivalry with Ohio State. They're not going to say that Ohio State's their rival. That would be Michigan. Ohio State only has one rival. That would be Michigan. But, there were some years where Ohio State and Michigan State certainly played close games, and the rivalry was pretty strong. So, you're not going to go up there and be invited to come over to somebody's house and have dinner and drink his finest booze and smoke his cigars or anything. But, it's a fun trip. I highly recommend it. Then they go to Penn State. First of all, you're not going to get to stay in State College. Let's just be honest. Unless you book it a year in advance and you have a lot of money. And if you have a lot of money, be sure to sponsor the Big Me Kickoff by Kevin Noon here. If you have a lot of money and you're looking to spend some of it, you can sponsor the Big Me Kickoff. Just shoot me an email over at kevin@buckeyegrove.com if you're looking to do that. Yes, I still have my old email. But back to Penn State. You're going to be lucky to get closer than Altoona, or even to get into Altoona. Altoona can be a 2-night minimum. State College is definitely a 2-night minimum. Altoona can be $300 a night. I stay in Bedford, and if you're coming from Ohio, especially if you're coming from Central Ohio, you're taking 70 out to the Turnpike to 99, and then you take 99 essentially into State College. Well, at the Turnpike in 99 is a little city called Bedford. A couple hotels there, a couple restaurants there, some weird beer laws. I don't know if they've changed them. You have to go to like a distributor to go get beer. It's bring your own. But I've found it to be something that works. I found it, you can get one night. It's a little bit more. If you're used to paying $100 a night, you're paying $150, $160. I'm kind of a Marriott guy myself. I do Hiltons as well. I do stay at a Hilton property. You pay up a little, but it is what it is. Now, as for Penn State itself, duck. Those fans can be surly. And I understand Ohio State fans have this worldwide reputation in terms of going to the games of being the worst. Well, let me tell you, in my opinion, Penn State fans are incredibly difficult. I will tell a story. I was driving into the first road game I'd ever covered at Penn State in my career. I'm not going to make it sound like I was 25 years old. It took me a while to get out into the field, worked in the television industry, was always stuck in the studio. So I'm pulling up. I don't have any Ohio State swag on my car. This was 4 cars ago. It happened to be a gray car. That was the car I was leasing at the time. Of course, I had Ohio tags, lived in Ohio. It's numbered spots out there for a lot of it. A lot of it's numbered spots. So if you're in spot 6489, you have to park in spot 6489. So I'm going out to my spot in a field where they still have the stuff numbered. I have to admit that setup is pretty decent. Elderly lady, 60s, 70s, standing in the way. Won't move. Looks at me. I look at her. She looks at me. I'm kind of like well, are you going to move? Shoots me the bird. I'm like, what the hell was that all about? Shoots me the bird. So I honk the horn, And then other people start to get involved, like, what are you doing honking at this old lady? I'm like, I rolled on the window. I'm like, she needs to move. So welcome to Penn State. That's my first impression of being there. And of course, we hear the stories of, oh, the band gets pelted with bags of this and that. And I'm not in the band. I've never been in the band. I can't corroborate, but it wouldn't surprise me. I've been to Wisconsin, and they take marshmallows and put rocks or pennies in them and freeze them, and those things become weighted down projectiles and had those hurled. So I don't know. I tell people when they're thinking of taking a Big Ten road trip, going to cover up or going to see, I cover, you would go to see. Going to see a whiteout game at Penn State is something to behold. Be prepared to either be very isolated in a section of rowdy Penn State fans, or the seats that they give Ohio State fans are horrible. The parents are in the upper tank, far away from everything. You see a sea of white, and then you see just a little speckle of red, of scarlet, up in the upper tank. When you're looking on TV, it would be kind of out to the left part of the stadium and up, where on the right is where they do kind of that inverted S with the blue to stand out against the white. So you're warned. It's worth it. If you can't deal with some grief, don't do it. Now, they go to Northwestern as well. And Northwestern, you can just walk right in. I know they're spending money on their facilities and everything else. Ryan Field, nothing to really write home about. Evanston's a great little area. Everybody's going to talk about the hot dog stand, about Mustard's last stand there. It's good. It's not remarkable. I mean, it's history. We do find, though, a lot of history places are more about the history and less about the product. And, it's fine. I mean, what can you really do with a hot dog? I mean, I've been to places in Columbus like Dirty Frank's. They're fantastic hot dogs, but it's a hot dog. So relax. You're right there with Chicago. A lot of people just stay in Chicago and do whatever they want to do, and then go up to Evanston for the game. I've never stayed out in Evanston. I stayed close once. I stayed with a friend out at his house. So I didn't have a car, and I was at a friend's house, so I didn't really get to go roaming around. So I can't tell you a ton about Evanston. I did kind of walk around and tailgate there a little bit before a game, but even with that, I didn't, I'm not going to go into a bar and drink, but at least I got an opportunity to kind of see some things around there. So Northwestern is an easy trip. It's an inexpensive ticket unless they're making you buy a season ticket in order to get the Ohio State game to try and limit the number of Ohio State fans. They got bills to pay. They just need to sell those tickets. So there you go. Last home game that they've got, or last road game they've got, is Maryland. Now with Maryland, you got a couple of options. You've got Baltimore and you've got Washington, D.C. Now I have finally stayed in College Park, and I highly recommend it if you can do it. Not that College Park is amazing, but you're just right there. You're not messing around with Baltimore. You're not messing around with D.C. in terms of traffic and everything else. But you have fantastic cities there to go and see things. Now, for every good part I can say about Baltimore and I can say about DC, there are 10 bad things I can say about them. I've spent a lot of time in Baltimore through the years, and it's probably one of the most dysfunctional cities in terms of there's 5 good blocks, and then 5 bad blocks, then 5 good blocks, and it's like, oh, yeah, that place is like 7 blocks away. And then the local will say, but take a car service. Don't walk. So, and then DC is DC. I mean, there's some fantastic stuff in DC, but there's also areas that aren't so great. So I don't want anybody going and being like, but dude, you told me to go there. It was fantastic. And, I ran into some trouble. Well, there you go. So as for the stadium, it's okay. I mean, it's fine from an aesthetics view. I'll say this, it's not a great situation for the road team who has to go and tape up on the field because the visitor locker room is so crummy. The post-game media room is this little brick building that's about a quarter the size of what it needs to be for when the Ohio State beat comes out there. But as for a fan, I would do that one. I would definitely do Maryland just because of what's around there. And so much of this, it's not that you're going into the game and just saying, I'm just going to the game and then I'm getting out of Dodge and I'm going home. Unless you live out there, then okay. You need to have something to do in conjunction with the game to make it worth it. To pack up the family or to pack up, the guys' weekend or the girls' weekend or whatever. You need to find a couple of things to attach to it to make it worthwhile, or so I would think. Maryland's worthwhile. Maryland's worthwhile. On 23, as I said, I'm only going to talk about 4 games, and 3 of them I'm not even positive are going to be road games, but the assumption is safe. And I know we're at 15 minutes. Noon said we were going to only go 15 minutes. All right, we're going to go 20. We're going to go through this a little quicker. At Notre Dame. I've never seen a game at Notre Dame. I've been to South Bend. I've been on the Notre Dame campus. I've worked camps at Notre Dame. South Bend, everybody's like, Notre Dame is beautiful and South Bend is not. Yes, that is true. Notre Dame is very nice campus. I've liked what I've seen of Notre Dame. I like the history, Touchdown Jesus, the Golden Dome, all of that. And I'm not a Notre Dame supporter by any stretch of the imagination. So let's not pretend that Noon's just being soft on Notre Dame because he likes them. No, the Notre Dame campus is nice. South Bend, on the other hand, is there. It's just there. And when I stayed out there to do the camps, I was not thrilled about it. I was out there when Jimmy Clausen had his announcement ceremony at the College Football Hall of Fame, which has been relocated to Atlanta now. And I stayed in Chicago. I stayed out near Midway and then drove in the morning of. So it's a trip worth going to. Tickets are going to probably be through the roof. So good luck, via con Dios, on that one. At Indiana, Bloomington can be a sneaky good time. There's some good places to eat. We were going to do a scoop eats from one of them. Just fate kind of intervened and we didn't do it. But there's some good places to eat. If you can get into Bloomington and stay in Bloomington, great. If not, be ready for traffic nightmares. They're working on expanding and creating Interstate 69, which a lot of it's going to be kind of State Route 37. And you need to take State Route 37 mostly to get into Bloomington, unless you go further south and then kind of go through the woods to get up there. Now, if you're coming up from Cincinnati, you're not going to have to mess around with 37. The point being is, if you're not coming in from Cincinnati or point south, and you stay in Indianapolis, which I highly recommend because Indianapolis is a fantastic city, be ready for a lot of traffic. Have Waze on, have Google Maps on, have something on to try and find any way to avoid as much of 37. In 30 years or whenever this traffic project's done, it's going to be a breeze to get into Bloomington. But I don't remember a time where they've not been doing significant major road work on the way into Bloomington. Memorial Stadium, on the other hand, it had a little bit more charm when it had the playground out behind the one end zone. Now that it's into a big recruiting building or something, it's nicer in terms of what they've done in terms of the facilities, but it's a very anesthetic type of feel there. It's a close trip. It's a close trip. It's an easy trip outside of going on 37. So I recommend, if you've never done a road game and you're looking for one, hey, I just want to try this out. I want to see if I like this. Try it. Do Indiana. I say for sure. We'll go quickly through Rutgers. Rutgers, again, is a case of where you've got New York City, you got Newark, New Jersey, rather than Newark, Ohio. I prefer staying in New Brunswick, Bridgewater, staying out closer to campus. I've done the New York side of things. You're paying 3x on hotels. You're paying 5x on food. You're dealing with a lot of transportation issues. Everybody's like, well, you can take the train. Yes, the train into Piscataway does not put you right at the stadium. You still have to get from the station to the stadium. The stadium is nice enough, I guess. I mean, the tailgate lots, I think the tailgate lots are pretty fantastic there, but the stadium's okay. Yeah, do that one. I think again, you have New York City in the backdrop. You have some things to do, but I wouldn't make it my first trip. I wouldn't say, well, I'm going to pass up all these other ones because I just really want to go to Rutgers. Now, if you really want to go to Rutgers, go to Rutgers. Who am I to tell you not to? But yeah. And then, of course, there is Michigan in Ann Arbor. Now, I normally don't stay in Ann Arbor. There are some hotels there. Again, you're not going to be able to stay on Lane Avenue in Columbus. You're not going to be able to stay on Olentangy River Road in Columbus unless you know somebody, got some money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I do know people who get into the Blackwell. I don't know how they do it, but they do. But, you're going to be staying in Worthington. You're going to be staying in Hilliard. You're going to be staying maybe even downtown, which isn't horrible. For Michigan, you're not going to probably be staying in Ann Arbor. Livonia. I've stayed in Livonia before. That's where I was supposed to stay this year. Didn't end up happening. I digress. I've stayed into Detroit. But if you're going to go out and party with some people, closer is better. Closer is better. Now, I know I'm supposed to hate on Ann Arbor. I don't like Ann Arbor in the winter because there are some cobblestone streets. There's some brick streets there, and your car is just going to slide all over the place. A couple good places to eat. I've not spent a ton of time in Ann Arbor outside of games and camps, so I can't sit there and say, well, we're going to eat here, we're going to eat there, we're going to eat everywhere. I don't know. I don't know. And I have a place to eat in every city, and I do have some places to eat in Ann Arbor, but I'm not going to get into naming places at this point. That's going to be a later series that we're going to work on. The stadium on its own, it's a big hole in the ground. That's all I can say. It's a big hole in the ground. Bench seating, better like your neighbors because you're going to be sitting on their laps because it's tight. Most times it's been, a good number of Ohio State fans. Even last year was a good number of Ohio State fans. Unfortunately, the outcome didn't go the way that all the Ohio State fans wanted, so probably a crummy, miserable trip out of there. But for everything that I say about Penn State, for everything that I could say about going to Camp Randall, Wisconsin, which I'm not talking about on this show, do that trip. I mean, again, the fans can be a little mean, a little surly, but that's a fun trip to go, especially if you're young enough to appreciate all of it. At Michigan, yeah, you're going to run into some people. You're going to run into people anywhere, but for the most part, it's pretty docile. I mean, there are going to be some people that are going to pop off a little bit, but it's generally not that bad because I think that even with the extreme hatred and the rivalry, there is a level of weird respect. So Michigan is another trip that I would say you need to make at least once if you are into traveling to games. Now, with that being said, by the time you pack up the family truckster and get 4 tickets and 2 hotel rooms for a couple of nights and meals and everything else, you could buy a big screen TV. So I know there are a lot of people who just are not as keen of going to games now based on the getting priced out. So, take it for what it's worth. But this is kind of a kickoff to me talking to you about Big Ten travel. I've got some other ideas I'm working on. It isn't something I'm going to drop next week. But over on Buckeye Scoop on the Ask the Insiders board, I did ask people to kind of sound off on their thoughts on taking Big Ten trips if they've taken them. I didn't want to get so much into a lot of the non-conference. I know we talked about Notre Dame, but I didn't want to get so much into that because a lot of that's just one-offs. I mean, when am I going to go to some of these cities again? I don't know. I mean, how often do you go to Seattle to go cover a game against Washington? Not that often. I've done it once. I mean, you're much more likely that I'm going to go to repeat cities for bowl games because that's what that is. But let me know in the comments your thoughts. Do you travel? And I may put a poll question up too. Do you travel to games? What are your favorite games? What are your favorite things to do on these trips? What do you, what's your most memorable road trip in terms of going with the backdrop of an Ohio State football game? I want to hear all of this. Be sure to post all that in the comments. I'll check that. If you're listening to us on SoundCloud, Spreaker, iTunes, any of those platforms and are not on the YouTube channel, be sure, just shoot me a note, kevin@buckeyegrove.com. kevin@buckeyegrove.com. If you want to be included in this conversation, and we'll follow it up here in a week or two, give people some chances to sound off on this. I'm really interested in this because when I was a student at Ohio State, traveling to a road game was so foreign. Maybe it was because I had no money. I was on the mommy and daddy scholarship, but mommy and daddy said, you're not getting any screw around money. Any screw around money you want to have to work for. I didn't want to have a job in college. By my junior year, I did because I didn't have any money. But, it was such a weird idea. And then I finally went to Wisconsin. And then I get into this job, or I get into a previous job and go to Illinois to cover a game working for a TV station. And then I leave the market and I start covering a lot of games based on a job I had before this. And now I travel and get to go to the road games. So is traveling, is that like a completely foreign idea to you? Or is that, oh no, Noon, I do this all the time. I love it. It's a favorite part of my year. Sound off. Let me know. But we're over 25 minutes. So once again, I went longer than I thought, but we're going to wrap things up. Again, I'm your host, Kevin Noon. This is a Big Me Kickoff. Be sure to let me know in the comments. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell if you're watching on YouTube. Don't miss a single show on the Buckeye Scoop channel, Morning Scoop, Buckeye Weekly podcasts, Gibbs in the Bank, Around the Oval, all those great shows. If you're listening on any of the podcast platforms, leave us a 5-star review. Help us get the word out there to more people so they can join us in this community. Probably going to do a live show next week. Keep an eye out there. I will make sure to let people know through social media if I'm going to do a live show. Love doing that, being able to interact with y'all directly. But until then, I'm your host, Kevin Noon, Big Me Kickoff, signing off.